Does look me in the eye help convincing? Do two people collaborating estimate tasks better compared to estimates by solo employees? You'd be surprised on both. I'm Dr. Samuel Blacher, PhD in leadership, master's in management of engineering and technology, former director with McDonald's, vice president with Mimic Networks, senior manager with Apple, and founder, among other roles. And this video is part of my research-based, practice-oriented short videos about organizational behavior, culture, and leadership. On this episode, I focus on insights on how to better convince, be more likable in arguments, handle conflicts, collaborate, and negotiate, which at some points apply also more broadly beyond work. In my LinkedIn newsletter articles about this, I mentioned some sources for some insights that I will mention here. Let's start with conflicts, disagreements, and convincing. Oh, hi, visual effects Samuel. I gotta tell you, I love your videos and newsletter articles. I have an idea. Would you like to invest all of our money in hamster-driven cars? I believe that's the transportation of the future. Apparently, I haven't convinced me, perhaps because I looked myself in the eye. Contrary to popular belief, direct eye contact during persuasive communication can actually make people more resistant to changing their attitudes. A study showed that listeners who maintained direct eye contact with speakers were less likely to be persuaded compared to when listeners looked at the speaker's mouth. And, as I mentioned, eye contact was also found to trigger a psychological response that made listeners more resistant to the speaker's argument. So, prefer read my lips over look in my eye. Stick around, we'll get back to convincing and related stuff shortly. Most employees surveyed described work disagreements as moderately to extremely unpleasant. More than a third preferred to avoid them, and more than 40% thought that they had negative consequences on their work relationships and productivity. Think of all the information exchange, creative ideas, solutions, and workarounds that are potentially lost because of people preferring to avoid engagements. Think of all the interpersonal relationships that do not happen. On the other hand, think about the negative consequences if engagements happen but are approached incorrectly. Research shows that well-managed disagreements produce better results than avoidance. In addition, 96% of people trained in conflicts said it helped them deal with them more effectively. 73% felt more confident and comfortable engaging in disagreements, and 62% felt they were able to turn potentially destructive conflicts into productive ones. But what is a well-managed conflict? Many people think that others who have opposing views have them because they are misinformed or unintelligent, maybe even bad-intentioned. Yet across various demographics, people tend to attribute more bias to others than they do to themselves, while considering themselves as more objective or unbiased. Of course, this cannot mathematically happen. So many people must be wrong. Ironically, the asymmetry between bias people attribute to others and bias they attribute to themselves is especially strong with people who hold strong beliefs about biases. In addition, the vast majority of people who were going to debate controversial issues predicted that they would win. Again, of course, this can't mathematically happen, so many people are wrong. Due to people's excessive beliefs in their own objectivity, they tend to overestimate the level of self-threat experienced by their counterparts during a conflict. But there is a way to tackle that. When people were asked to explicitly predict theirs and others' biases, the bias estimate asymmetry diminished. Studies show that we tend to get selectively exposed to information because of our sense of self-objectivity and rationalism, and because of the perception of self-threat and the discomfort of encountering opposing views that can challenge our self-concept and beliefs. Also, because of the mental effort that is required to engage with them, which we often prefer to avoid. So, for example, conservatives tend to prefer to get their news from Fox News or Newsmax, and liberals tend to prefer to get it from CNN or MSNBC. Well, people who selectively expose themselves to information from their own echo chamber, which is probably most of us, they can benefit their reputation within their like-minded circle. They're often perceived as more biased by those outside their ideological circle, which can lead to reputational costs in a more diverse environment. So, as a practical example, If you live and work in San Francisco and interact almost only with progressives, preferring to expose yourself to progressive information sources would probably usually benefit your reputation when interacting with people around you, but hurt it when interacting with people outside your area. And if you live and work in a more ideologically diverse environment, like in New York City, Miami, or Phoenix, you will likely damage your reputation with coworkers and other people if you do not expose yourself to diverse sources of information. People usually overestimate the negative emotions they'll have when listening to opposite views and underestimate the level to which they might agree with an opposing view, which influences their choice about information consumption. An experiment that exposed people to news with opposing views decreased these people's negative feelings about the opposing political party. Perhaps such people learned something new or were exposed to different angles of news, context, information, or reasoning behind the opposing views. This means that there is a lot of false polarization in our society. This is also established by another study where Republicans surveyed thought that most Democrats would agree with the statement that police officers are bad people, yet less than 20% of surveyed Democrats actually agree with that statement. In 2017, after Trump's first election win, the day he was sworn in, Hillary Clinton voters who were surveyed anticipated extreme anger, disgust, and sadness when asked how they would feel when watching the event. Yet, their reactions were much less negative in reality. A few months later, real liberals and conservatives were asked how they expected they would feel while listening to Ted Cruz's speeches for liberals and to Bernie Sanders' speeches for conservatives. Their predictions turned out to be consistently and significantly overestimated compared to their feelings when actually hearing the speeches. So, again, a lot of false polarization in our society. Receptiveness to opposing views is a mutual interaction thing and can be contagious and influenced by behaviors and perceptions of both parties, where emotional expressions and observable behaviors, such as showing curiosity, can have significant effect on perceived receptiveness. When one side is receptive, the other side is more likely to respond similarly. Research indicates that people who ask more questions in a conversation are rated as more likable by their conversation partners, and those who were asked elaboration questions by their counterparts in a debate were more receptive to opposing views, viewed conclusions of argument as more valid, rated their counterparts more favorably, and were more open to engaging in conversations with them in the future. Such conversations were also perceived as more engaging and enjoyable. Conclusion: be receptive, be curious, and show that. People often underestimate how interested their counterparts are in learning about opposing views during conflictual conversations compared to themselves, which leads to a more negative perception or attitude towards their opponents and more negative expectations for future interactions. Using information to increase the beliefs about parties' willingness to learn can mitigate derogation and increase the willingness to engage in future conversations. Research shows that higher receptiveness to opposing views is influenced by applying empathy, open mindedness, acknowledging the other person's perspective, finding common grounds, and replying thoughtfully, potentially with an opposing view that is perceived to be, well, credible. In turn, this can significantly improve engagement, reduce tension, conflict, polarization, and this is linked to better decision making and more constructive discussions. People who use these strategies are seen as better teammates and advisors. They are also more persuasive and viewed as having better judgment. Quick example: Wikipedia editors who used receptive language were less likely to receive personal attacks. Conversational receptiveness can also significantly improve interpersonal evaluations and increase the willingness to engage in future conversations. Making your arguments subjective, such as, in my opinion, this and that, and softening or hedging them, such as, sometimes this and that, or it seems that this and that, while incorporating positive emotion, can also help collaboration. People trust others with opposing ideological views and are willing to collaborate more with them when they share their views through personal narratives that reveal sensitive or vulnerable aspects of their experience rather than only through data or third-party stories. Adding data to personal narratives does not hinder that trust, but on the other hand, when people relay their views solely via data, they are perceived as less trustworthy. So while data is important, it seems to lack the emotional appeal that personal narratives provide. Conclusion: try to direct disagreements at the issue, not at the person. Have a growth mindset of wanting to learn why others think differently. And remember that no one has the whole truth. We can all learn, and we can also have different angles, interpretations, or contexts for the same truth. Share your personal experiences or feelings not only via data. Oh, and try to make people look at your mouth rather than in your eyes. Maybe wear a green lipstick or something. Anyway, even if disagreements remain, it's fine. I disagree with some of my own views from a few years ago, and I'm in a great relationship with myself. Let's talk about confrontation from a different angle. How to elicit the truth from people. Now, be very careful about this one. While it may not be the nicest thing or best to maintain good social relationships or even work relationships long term, asking questions with a negative approach while assuming that there is a problem leads to greater disclosure of undesirable behaviors compared to a positive attitudes which presumes that there is no problem, or even compared to general neutral questions. Questions that come from a negative assumption make the asking person seem more assertive and knowledgeable to the person being asked, which can increase the respondent's pressure to be truthful, believing that the asker is already aware of some issues. However, such negative assumption questions can lead to a perception of the asker being confrontational or critical, which might lead to some adverse consequences of the interaction and to the asker being less liked by the respondent. And this is especially risky with questions about sensitive behaviors, which can make respondents feel judged or unfairly scrutinized. So again, be very careful about that, and if you decide to use the negative approach, be very selective and assess the overall risk versus value. Unless you're a CIA interrogator or something like that. Even then, you should probably still assess the risk versus value. In the intro, I mentioned some surprising insights about task estimates, so here it comes. We may intuitively think that a joint estimate would be better than a solo estimate, but research shows that estimates made by pairs of people were not, in general, more accurate than individual made estimates. Furthermore, pairs who made estimates together tended to incorporate advice from an external, third individual less compared to individuals making decisions alone, who were more receptive to external advice. So pairs generally undervalued external input. Such pairs reported higher confidence in their own estimates, which led them to believe that their own judgments were more accurate, thus reducing their reliance on outside information. The study also showed that there was a linkage between increased confidence and rejection of external advice. To sum up, collaboration can increase confidence in the outcomes of the collaboration, yet that confidence may reduce the receptiveness to external feedback about those outcomes. And such joint estimates are not necessarily more accurate. How about how we estimate our own tasks versus how we estimate others' completion times for tasks? Interestingly, we have a bias on both, and it goes in different directions. People often underestimate their own task completion times, which is called planning fallacy, while they often overestimate others' ETAs. But there is a way to tackle the self-estimate bias. When people intentionally construct their self-estimates for future plans based on their previous specific experiences rather than based on feelings or perceptions without walking through them, the optimistic self-estimate bias is eliminated. An example to how to do it would be thinking something like, in the previous time I did it, it took me this and that amount of time, but in this new case, there is an added task that in the past took me another given amount of time. So the upcoming new task combined would probably take me this and that plus this and that, right? So this is breaking down or walking through the actual experiences I had. Before we conclude this episode, here are a few quick surprising insights about negotiations. Many people believe that warm and friendly negotiators would be better liked and achieve better economic outcomes than negotiators who use tough and firm approach. But a study found that negotiators who communicated in a tough and firm manner achieved more favorable deals for themselves compared to negotiators who used a warm and friendly style. Perhaps a tough approach conveyed a stronger position and higher expectations, leading to better concessions from the counterpart. Furthermore, tough and firm language in making offers led to more favorable counteroffers from the other party. On top of that, interestingly, counterparts of negotiators who used the warm and friendly approach did not report higher levels of satisfaction or enjoyment of the interaction compared to those who negotiated with tough and firm counterparts. So, warmth or friendliness in negotiations does not necessarily translate to a more pleasant negotiating experience for the counterpart. That's it for this episode. If you have anything to contribute, please comment, I'll be responding. And if you find this insightful, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. And again, you're also welcome to subscribe to my LinkedIn newsletter. The details are in the description of the video. Thank you very much for watching.